Hello, everyone. I'm Christina. Sorry I'm a couple of minutes late, but that rambunctious kitten you've been seeing running around here just got adopted. Her new parents are coming to pick her up at 6 o'clock tonight. Yes, yes. She's a doll. But I'm glad to see already some people coming on, and thanks for the thumbs up. That's really awesome. As much as you can share the videos, that helps a lot too, because they really are suppressing this platform I have here. And it can be a little frustrating, as a lot of you know. Okay, we have Knife Collector. Good to see you. Coffee. Yes, caffeine. Wonderful. Okay, so last night, Mike from around the world was on the Paul Begley show. There's a link in the description box for that, okay? For that entire video, if you so choose to look for it, it's there. I in no way take credit for what he's done. We just like to review and discuss things, you know? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go straight into the notes. And if you do subscribe, make sure you hit the all notifications bell and check to make sure that it is the notification bell is clicked right. That way you can get your notifications. Okay, so we're starting off. They start off talking about concerned believers will. They were concerned that believers would fall into traps. Paul Begley says, put more faith in God, right? And Mike says, yeah, because if they don't, they will be drawn into what has been planned. So Mike is talking about things that have been planned for the general population for a very, very long time, and that are sinister in nature. And then they go into Russia just had 3 volcanoes erupt at once simultaneously, and then a seismic event in Iceland. And Mike says it's amazing how much pressure there is. It's like a pressure cooker. Eventually, it's going to blow. He started talking about 2 pulses that came from space, and we have a few more coming, which is never good, because I'll tell you right now, my breakers start tripping every time these crazy solar winds and CMEs come in. I don't know if y'all have noticed that. You know, if you'll have issues with your phone or any of your electronics. Yep. Each time they correspond with events on Earth, I bet. Pulses are bands of radiation that have an effect on Earth, like charging a lithium battery, increased heat on the Earth, which we already know that. They're still looking at land masses in the southern hemisphere. Every time reverberations around the Earth. What you are seeing now are indicators. Russia is an indication. Concerned about Italy, and he does keep going on and on and on about Italy. I believe it's because of a volcano. And the way the plates are pressed together are indications of what is likely to give. This could be a deadly winter, and I've been hearing a lot of people say that. Has anybody else noticed that they've been going on and on about how deadly of a winter this could be? Especially like if they have the rolling blackouts, you know, do y'all have alternative heating? Because I tell you, this might be a really good time to purchase a Mr. Buddy heater if you got a little extra cash running around. Well, not running around, lying around. Okay, there we go. Let's go back, because we're going to talk about Pat Robertson's prophecy too, because Mike from around the world did mention that, and it is getting kind of popular, and I thought we'd go ahead and take a look at that too. So I took notes on what he said too. We'll get to that in a little bit. Okie dokie. So to see what's going on, this could be a deadly winter. Why? Increased radiation. Earth is soaking up the radiation. We know this, but what a lot of people don't know is that it's evaporating more and more moisture, which is being caught in the atmosphere, and the atmosphere is retaining more moisture than usual, twice as much. So that means extreme pressure differences that'll bring differences between hot and cold. Meteorologists are taken back by this. Extremes between hot and cold will start tearing up the infrastructure. Snowstorms with wind at 60 to 70 miles per hour, forecast winter storms, power outages. We're going to deal with ash and glass and air from volcanoes. Inhaling glass will mutate your bones. It will also turn to concrete if you breathe in ash in your lungs too. Italy is still a big problem because there's so many people. USA has more fault lines than we thought before, and that we're getting more every single day. And I mean, I don't know about all you guys, but I've been telling y'all that, the ground underneath our feet, it's not really stable. We can't necessarily count on it to be there. And so when you imagine that there's so much pressure underneath our feet, that the earth is opening up and cracks are beginning to form. I mean, okay, I remember when I was a kid, right? I was like 8 years old, and I was on the back porch with my buddies, and we had a BB gun. We were shooting that BB gun while I decided to aim for a tree, having no idea that that BB gun was going to ricochet into the glass doors behind me. And I just remember hearing this cracking going on, as slowly the entire pane of glass was one big, huge cracked thing, and then it just collapsed. But to know that that is what is happening to the United States, not really just the United States, but I believe that is what he was referring to. Yeah, he was, just at least in this part of the conversation, right? Because we know the entire earth is being affected, but he's saying that we're getting more fault lines than we thought before every day. Should have an issue in the Atlantic very soon. I mean, they did mention the rift, the Atlantic rift, in the middle of there. So I imagine that has something to do with it. It's really, really strange that they should mention something about the Atlantic and then not go into it too much. Sometimes I wonder if they're saving it for their special conferences, but they say enough to really give it away. Let me see. Okay. They mentioned Yellowstone, which everybody is mostly worried about, but Mike was more concerned as usual with Italy and Tamu Massif. And Tamu Massif is like, if I'm not mistaken, the biggest subsea volcano in the world. It's right around Japan, okay? And he's saying that all of these volcanoes are going off right now. He mentioned Mount Vesuvius, which should be around Italy. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not a geographic genius. I just try to remember what I can. But when you're talking about volcanoes, it should go without saying that they mean the subsea volcanoes also. And he's saying that the Tamu Massif is a much bigger concern than Yellowstone, even though Yellowstone is a valid concern. This one's bigger. He says if Greenland is disturbed, we're going to have issues, and Iceland is an indicator of Greenland, because if you remember, Iceland had just had a pretty good earthquake the other day, if not yesterday, and that if Iceland is having problems, that's showing, according to these people, that Greenland is having problems. Because Greenland protects, it's like a big filtration system there. If that barrier goes, a lot of things, starvation will set in. One type of radiation destroys vegetation. Earth is beginning to emit exotic radiation. We're going to have vegetation issues that will affect the animals, making adjustments to meat, trying to give hints that people should store food. He was saying that there have been hints, not just, from people that have visions about it, but hints from the system itself here and there that you should be trying to store food, dry food, any kind of food, your own canned food. Moving closer to the binary star, Mars is changing drastically and is an indicator of what will happen to Earth soon. And, that kind of gives you more eyes and wonder, why would you be going to Mars if Mars is getting really bad changes too, and they're in front of us? I don't know. Why would you go to Mars? Why would they be any better off? I mean, just a question in my mind. Other planets are being hit by large pieces of debris watching the orbit of Jupiter, which is the gatekeeper for the other planets. If something happens to Jupiter, there will be nothing to stop the debris from coming for Earth. We'll likely have an anticipated hiccup with Jupiter. He started talking about the Kuiper Belt has a huge portion missing. A few events coming that no one can escape or get out of. Asteroids scraping by. Something will happen to our satellites. So I guess they're going to get hit. Makes you wonder what direction they're going to go in. Is it outer space, or is it going to come crashing back into, our skyline. They went quickly into talking about CERN. Starting tonight till Halloween, Steve Quayle says it will run at its highest power. Letting a nuclear weapon go has to be coordinated with the sun, which I didn't really understand that. But he started going into saying that it's to pay respects to a deity. But what they've done is go beyond 0 point energy, which makes total sense to me. Considering what I know about tesseracts and how they, anyway, talked about that in Revealing the Mandela Effect 1 and 2, those videos I made back then. But anyway, it involves, what they're doing here is they're peering into another dimension using voltage. And that's right, you use electricity, electromagnetics, and frequency. But when you've got something as big as CERN, right, they're using voltage with huge magnets. Yep, they're opening doors, no doubt about it. But this guy Mike starts talking about teeny quantum doors that you can extract energy to replace all the nuclear plants in the world. But there are consequences. To extract energy causes a reaction. Particles are matched. Every particle has a twin. He's talking about in other dimensions and other places, every particle has a twin. And if you mess with a particle twin in this realm, it messes with the twin in the other, which really goes to that, oh gosh, it was that experiment, double slit experiment, I believe, with an electron, how it could go through one slit or the other, not go through it all, and go through both of them at the same time. Talked about conscious choice theory too. That it might be something, but when you're talking about these quantum particles, I imagine they can do very much the same thing. They can be in two places at one time. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And anyway, no matter the distance, when it comes to quantum physics, there's really is no such thing as distance. Yeah, because we are connected. We're all connected by a form of electricity and magnets, and that's enough to create circuits, whether you understand that or not, between dimensions, people, and places. Everything is connected. One thing affects the other. All the power held in an atom and in a quark, they tap into these things. They found that the larger power is found in these smaller things. Then they started talking about, hold on before we go on, let me just check. Okay, if y'all have any comments, please feel free to comment, okay? They started talking about how they just had a 6.0 earthquake hit Chile. And I know that Mike has been talking about that, and he was saying the west side of South America, watching for volcanoes and earthquakes, because he said that it was kind of part of an event. And we realized later that he was talking about precrustal displacement. And now that is getting hit, you can just tell there's concern. He says that whole place in South America is about to be engulfed. Engulfed how is what I wanted to know. But when that begins shaking, California is going to follow. Mike starts talking about a dream he had about this. Heard people screaming because they didn't leave. They think the first quake isn't much, but right after that, everything goes. Could smell sulfur in the air. People began to smell sulfur in California. Then the birds left. Then there was a meeting at the border. Could see volcanoes going off in Mexico and South America, only to look back and see people marching in the streets of the U.S. This must be the worst of it. It must be over. But when they said that it began to shake, and saw tiny cars on the highway being shuffled. The highway went sideways, looked like no one survived, looked like Highway I-5, Interstate 5. The cracking noise and the screams, the landmass went up in the air, the way it did. Some of the buildings never fell, and the Grand Canyon slammed shut, entrance into a time of desperation. This is when they mentioned Pat Robertson, who is 90 years old. He made a prophecy that Trump would win the election. But there will be days of unrest and turmoil when he wins, which, we already kind of knew that anyway. But then he talked about 5 years of unusual peace. Now, that's where me and Mike both said we weren't sure Pat's timing on that, but we could really at least this is where Mike is talking about. I'll weigh in on my own here in a minute, but Mike says the results of an election can be delayed for a year. He's saying like maybe what could cause that unrest, that it's possible Trump would have to stay in office if that happened. People are becoming violent towards their children. If they can do that, they can take lives. People are reaching their psychological breaking points. Well, the elections, with the momentum of what is happening in the streets, is going to set this over the bar. There's a contingency in place to handle some of the fallout from this. Quick subject changed by Paul Begley about the king tide. And that is when Mike starts talking about Russia and how the water will just come up. He may not know about the king tide in one place, but he knew something about Russia and their water. And he said the bugs will be seen going in one direction, and then people are going to wake up in the middle of the night and there will be water everywhere and no noise from bugs. Okay, he was asked on the update of the coffin dream about seeing Trump in a coffin. Mike says he feels like events are falling into place, people becoming more violent. Media is fanning the flames, guiding people's thoughts, disturbing people. Talked a lot about media operative plants from former high-ranking military individuals, and the rest of it kind of trailed off at that point. Then we go into Pat Robertson's prophecy. Okay, he's 90 years old. And at first, when I listened to him, I wasn't very sure, but things started catching my ears pretty quick. He said Trump will win the election. After, though, trouble will happen, which we already figured that. Everybody pretty much says that much. Says he will be challenged by the Chinese threat of war, civil disobedience. And I'm telling you, everybody has been talking about the Chinese and Russians invading the United States with help from other countries after the elections, like November. And he also mentions at least 2 attempts on the president's life. Then Pat Robertson starts talking about the Ezekiel 38 prophecy, which is the attack on Israel, which would have to happen after an attack on America, because America's not there to help, which so far everything is right. And then he starts talking about a time of great revival and peace, which he says is 5 years or more. I seriously doubt it's going to be that long. We'll see in the end, but this is what Pat Robertson says, so I'm letting you know that's what he said. But that's what I've been talking about when I'd say there's going to be an apocalypse, not the tribulation. That's a different thing from the apocalypse. The apocalypse is also known as the Great Revival. And it's a time not just of great revival, but when there's a great move of God and secrets that he has sealed up until the end come out that only our generation would understand. So, and I always said that it would come through a book coming out of Israel, because that's what I'd always been taught. That was Revelation 10. And chapters related to Revelation 10 talked about a book coming out, and it was supposed to come out of Jerusalem, and it's supposed to be a book that was written by a messenger of our time that, because if it's time to reveal something, then you have to reveal it to the living messenger at the time so they can write it in a book, because that's what seers do. They write those things down in books. And so they talk about a book in Isaiah coming out too, the same thing, sweet as honey in the mouth, but bitter in the stomach. And so when he's saying the word will come out from Jerusalem, that's what I always understood. That book would come out of Jerusalem, and it would start the great revival in the days of the apocalypse. A lot of y'all may have heard something. You might have remembered that. I know I do. So for him to say time of great revival, that really made a lot of sense. Word taught all over the world. Bible talks about that and then after that, time of great distress, great tribulation. And he mentioned that an asteroid what he was doing was mentioning the sixth seal, how the moon turns to blood and the sun becomes dark. And he's saying an asteroid could cause a loss of sunlight, but I think that sixth seal is about a pole shift. An asteroid can, but a pole shift would be a lot better at it. And I know that's what we're looking at. Okay. And finally, in interesting news that's related to this, there was an article that came out about some crazy auroras. And the colors and the extremity of it was kind of a mystery to scientists. And they actually had a place where anybody could email them and give them their theory on what they thought happened. And guess what I did? I told them, I said, we're in a magnetic pole reversal. You're going to see strange auroras, and in rare places, rare colors, rare vibrancies. You're going to start seeing those, but they are dangerous. They do cause cancer. All right. So if you can, just watch them from a camera, somebody else's video. Since there's really not a whole lot more to say for now, I'm going to go ahead and get off of the live stream. And I want to thank everybody that was here. And just remember to hit like, share the videos so other people can get some of this information. And I will see you really, really soon. Bye, everybody.